Hey there, and welcome. We live in a world that's just flooded with data, and making the right call seems to get tougher every day. So today, we're going to open up the Analyst Toolkit. We're doing a high-level tour of 8 really powerful techniques that help turn all that data into decisive action. And just so you know, we'll be diving deep into each of these and their own future explainers.
So think about this for a second. How many big business decisions are still made on just a gut feeling? Or even worse, what's sometimes called the highest paid person's opinion. The HIPPO. It's a super common problem, right? Where intuition and not actual evidence is steering the ship. But what if we could swap out all that guesswork for something way more reliable?
And that is exactly where this toolkit comes in. Look, these 8 techniques aren't just some abstract algorithms for academics. They are practical, hands-on tools for building a strategy that's actually grounded in solid evidence. They're like a bridge that takes us from raw, messy data to clear, actionable insights.
So here's our game plan. We're going to walk through these tools by grouping them based on the kinds of big questions they help us answer. First, we'll look at forecasting what's coming next. Then, we'll get into decoding customer behavior. After that, we'll tackle some tools for mastering really complex systems, and we'll wrap it all up with what I think is the analyst's real challenge.
Okay, let's jump right into this first set of tools. These are all about looking at the data we have right now to make some really smart predictions about what's likely to happen tomorrow.
First up is regression analysis. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as a kind of statistical detective. It digs through all your data to find the hidden relationships between different things, helping you answer questions like, hey, if we spend more on ads, by how much exactly will our sales go up?
At its core, what regression is really trying to do is find that best fit line, a single, clear trend that cuts through all the scattered data points. By putting a number on the relationship between different factors, it lets a business go from just guessing what drives sales to building a mathematical model that can actually help predict them. But, and this is a huge but, there's a vital rule you have to remember with this tool. It's incredibly powerful, but it is not a magic crystal ball. Just like it says here, correlation does not equal causation. Just because 2 things seem to move together doesn't mean one is causing the other. To get real value out of this, you need good quality data and, just as important, careful human interpretation.
All right, our next forecasting tool is time series analysis, and this one looks at data a little differently. Instead of just focusing on the relationship between variables, it focuses on patterns over time. Think about daily stock prices, or monthly sales figures, or even hourly website traffic. The whole goal here is to find the underlying rhythm in the data. A really key technique here is to decompose the data, like you see on the slide. You basically pull it apart into these 3 pieces. You've got the long-term trend, any predictable cycles like sales spikes around the holidays, and then there's this leftover random noise. By projecting the first 2 forward, we can make a forecast. And that leftover noise, well, that's often where you find the most interesting stuff, the anomalies and the totally unexpected events.
Okay, so we've tried to look into the future. Now let's pivot and talk about understanding people. This next batch of tools is all about helping us get inside the minds of our customers to figure out why they do the things they do.
And that brings us to cluster analysis. The old days of marketing to some generic average customer are pretty much over. This technique uses machine learning to automatically sift through customer data and discover natural groupings or segments based on how people actually behave and who they are.
One of the most common ways to do this is with an algorithm called k-means, which is what's outlined here. Think of it like a game of hot and cold. The algorithm drops a few starting points, those are the centroids, and then it just keeps adjusting them over and over until it finds the center of the most logical, stable groups of customers. This is how businesses go from shouting at a crowd to having real conversations with specific communities.
So let's say you have a great idea for a new website design or a different marketing message. How do you know if it's actually any better? Well, that's where A/B testing comes in. It is hands down the best way to settle debates and replace opinions with cold, hard evidence from your actual users.
And the concept is just beautiful in its simplicity. You show one version, the champion, to one group of users, and you show the new version, the challenger, to another group. Then you just sit back and measure which one performs better. The winner is decided by the data, not by whoever has the loudest voice in the meeting. Next up is conjoint analysis. Now, if you just go out and ask customers what they want in a product, they'll usually say, I want everything and I want it for free. This tool is so smart because it gets around that problem. It forces people to make realistic trade-offs, just like they would in a real store, and by analyzing those choices, it reveals what they truly value.
But it is so important to understand a really common and kind of dangerous mistake people make with this analysis. It tells you which combination of features is the most preferred out of the options you showed people. It does not predict your actual market share or tell you how many units you're going to sell. It's a measure of preference, not a crystal ball for sales.
All right, let's buckle up. We're now moving into our final and most advanced set of tools. These are really designed for a whole different class of problem, for tackling these highly complex systems where the rules aren't clear and the best path forward is anything but certain.
Reinforcement learning is just a fascinating approach. Instead of giving a machine a bunch of explicit rules, you just give it a goal and let it learn the best strategy through pure trial and error. It gets rewards for good moves and penalties for bad ones, and over time, it figures out these incredibly complex long-term strategies all on its own.
And at the absolute heart of this learning process is a constant dilemma. Should the agent exploit what it already knows works to get a guaranteed, reliable reward right now? Or should it explore, try something new and risky that might lead to an even bigger payoff down the road? Learning to balance that trade-off is the key to mastery.
Next is Markov Chain Monte Carlo, or MCMC for short. Now, imagine you're trying to find the deepest part of a huge valley, but it's pitch black. You can't see the whole landscape at once. MCMC is like taking a series of smart steps in the dark. It's a purposeful random walk that explores the huge space of possible solutions, and it's designed to spend more of its time in the areas that are most likely to hold the right answer. It's a super powerful way to solve problems that are just too complex to map out directly.
And our final tool is one we all experience every single day: queuing theory. Yes, it's the actual science of waiting in lines. It gives us a mathematical way to analyze that fundamental tug of war between how fast people arrive and how fast you can serve them. How many checkout lanes does a store need to open? How many servers does a website need? This theory helps businesses optimize that balance, and it's crucial for everything from call centers to hospital emergency rooms.
So we've just explored 8 incredible tools, but the journey doesn't just end with the algorithm. The final, and maybe the most important step, lies way beyond the math.
It is so essential to remember that none of these techniques are magic. They don't just spit out the answer. What they do is provide powerful frameworks for structuring a problem, for challenging your assumptions, and for just thinking more clearly. Their true power is only unlocked when curious humans start asking the right questions.
And this brings us to the ultimate challenge, the one that lies beyond the math. As our tools, like cluster analysis, get better and better at grouping people, we face a pretty profound question of perspective. When we segment people into these ever more precise groups, how do we make sure we're still seeing and respecting the unique individual inside that group? And that's a question no algorithm can ever answer for us.